Let's get it on.
Uh,
Are you packed for
I
Vegas?
I was just gonna say, I'm glad that Yogi Roth has been able to take a quick break from all of his packing of his sequins and his leather pants for Vegas to break down the latest. I guess this would be the penultimate CFP top
Sure.
25. Yogi, how we doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Sad that the regular season over, so we're not calling games. We'll be at the game, so that'll be fun to celebrate what we believe will be an automatic invite into the college football playoff for either UW or Oregon. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to that, Ash, but I'm doing well. Got the Heisman coming up. Bo Nick's the favorite. I mean, things are feeling pretty good. How are you?
Life is good. Life is good. Absolutely. It all depends on what you focus on. And yeah, I think it's really cool. We've been covering this league for 12 years, and you think about the dream matchup that we're going to have on Friday night in the final Pac-12 championship game. And we've got two top five teams. And for the first time, as you said off the top, like this is going to be whoever wins is going to be going to the playoff. And there's a world in which, and we'll get to that in a little bit, that both teams, if some chaos happened, that perhaps two Pac-12 teams, which would just be poetic, I think. Okay, so let's get to the rankings. And Washington number 3, Oregon number 5. So both of those teams move up a spot after Ohio State loses. And I think you look at the Ducks, and it's clear that the committee views them as the best one-loss team. Arizona, they stay put at 15 after a impressive and big Territorial Cup win that I got to see this weekend. And then Oregon State falls to number 20, down 4 spots after losing to Oregon in that rivalry game on Friday night. So your initial reaction to that, Yogs?
Uh, Initial reaction, happy to see where Washington sits and where Oregon sits. I thought Arizona could easily climb. Having watched a lot of their football, you were there over the weekend. What they did was absolutely dominant. I think they're looked at right now as, wow, what a comeback, what a story versus look at this team. And if they were matched up against the teams ranked higher than them, how would that game go down? I'd love to see them play Penn State. Would love to see that game play out. I don't think we'll get it. I think they're on the outside looking in of a New Year's 6 bowl berth. So would have loved to see them a little higher. Oregon State, yep, sitting where they are. The Utah one just blows my mind because I'm looking at Tennessee, Clemson, Kansas State, and I'm saying to myself, like, how is Utah not in it? Because every one of Utah's losses are among the teams you just referenced that are ranked. Among the teams that are ranked. And I just look at the other leagues' losses and I don't see that, right? That's what facts are when you look at what Miami is doing, or when you just start comping some of the losses that these other teams have had. So I go to that. And then I go to reality of what happened this past Saturday in their quote unquote rivalry game against Utah, or excuse me, against Colorado. They're playing their fourth, fifth string quarterback, however you want to slice it up. And they go get that win, and they beat a team in Colorado. And I'm not piling on the Buffs. You know, I love the Buffs. They have one conference win this year, but they also have a conference win in the Big Ten and in the Big 12. So I just look at that. If like we're talking about conferences, I don't think the strength of the Pac-12 in totality is given the credibility that it should have. And I thought Utah would have had that. We will present that on Thursday morning to the committee. You can guarantee that'll be a point when we talk about them, because I think that impacts a little bit if you get into those like tight conversations around the one-loss teams and who is Oregon beaten and strength of schedule, etc. So we'll see how that shakes out over the course of, I guess, the final ranking. But those are kind of my big picture thoughts.
Yeah, because I mean, you're exactly right. Utah not being ranked matters for a few reasons, but most importantly to the two teams sitting there right at the top for the Pac-12, because it means that they would each have one more ranked win. All right, you look at Oregon. Obviously, the only blemish on their resume right now is that unbelievable, thrilling game that we saw in Seattle, a month and a half ago. Hats off to Washington. Let's just start right there. They're going to be the home team on Friday night. They are the first team in the Pac-12 era to go undefeated, unscathed. They just keep winning. They just keep figuring out ways to win. They've been tested in every single way. And I think about that 4th and 1 call, Ryan Grubb. I mean, it took some stones to do what they did. And for Roma Dunze to make that play and for them to kick the game-winning field goal as time expired, yet again, they pull it out. And I just say my hat's off to them. And I know guarantee you, they're seeing where Vegas is saying that Oregon is favored however many points above them. That stuff will all make its way back to Washington, and I think it favors the Huskies that most people are picking the Ducks in this championship game.
Yeah, look, there's a lot there. You nailed it. Nobody's ever gone undefeated in this league. Oh, by the way, 9 conference games are played. I say that because Florida State doesn't play 9 conference games. Alabama doesn't play 9 conference games. Georgia doesn't play 9 conference games. So there's something to be said for them and Oregon, right? They didn't have Chattanooga in week 11. They didn't have Louisiana Monroe in week 11, like a healthy game. They've had to figure it out. And they've had some injuries along the way at really every key position on this team, including quarterback. Michael Penix Jr. has not been at full strength towards kind of the middle final third of the season. Now he's feeling good now, but I think it's worth noting. I think the other thing is that when you talk about championship teams, and I go back to my time at SC, we'd be undefeated, and it is hard. Because when you have that one loss, it becomes kind of us against the world. Like you feel that and you watch the cinematic recaps of Oregon. But when you're undefeated, it just keeps building and building on you. It is a challenge, Ash, to meet that moment, as you know, and they've done it. And you go to the critical moments in games, fourth quarter. I mean, they've only allowed 10 total points in the fourth quarter in the last 4 games. In their last 8 games have been decided by 10 points. I mean, these have been tight games where they've won. They've won tight games. I think there's something to be said for that because they've been tested. They've been tested more than any team in the country. Their final month of the season was dramatically more challenging than any team in the country. And when they've had to make a play, 4th and 1, to your point, most recent game, they make it. When they've had to make a play, go to the Oregon game, audible, touchdown, Rome Odunze. Go through their schedule. There's moments every weekend where they have to make plays to win the game. Running the football defensively. I mean, I think the play of the game last week, honestly, was Rome Odunze knocking the ball down that almost got intercepted on that game-winning drive when it's a poorly thrown ball and he's got to stick his left hand in there and get between him and the defensive back. That would have sent it to overtime if Washington State gets the interception. So they've done championship things. And if they win, they're in. And I also think for Oregon, because I know we talked about the Utah thing and the strength of schedule and record, I think Utah's just being disrespected, period. Oregon's going to be fine. And I know we'll get into that, but I look at this top 5 championship game as one of the greatest championship games we've ever had. I think it's the best one. And it's one of the best of all time when you look at the end of the CFP 4-team era.
Well, and just the fact that it's a rivalry game. It's the first time we've had a natural rivalry in the football championship game. And hats off to the league who made the change last year so that this would be possible, right? They went away from North and South and all the coaches said, okay, let's do it. Let's have our 2 best teams, because this was the goal, to have it be that it would be a play-in game and potentially more for the CFP. We've mentioned it a little bit, but before we actually dive into like specifically the thing you're most excited to see in the matchup, I think there is a world in which, and you said it in the post-game show on Saturday night, that both Washington and Oregon could get in. So I think, to lay it out from at least where I see it, Oregon wins a thrilling tight game against Washington on Friday night. You would then need Alabama, Texas, and Florida State all to lose in their championship games this week.
Look, I see the reality. And what's fun is that the committee, I'm always a fan of putting the committee in the most challenging position possible, just to see what these 13 people do. I mean, they are the 13 people that were dramatically trusted and entrusted with the sport that we love so dearly, and in a sport that's dramatically different than any other when you're talking about postseason invitations. So I say that of like, what if, let's just imagine everybody wins out. What do they do? You know, what do they do? If you look at all the favorites, I think that'll be very compelling. What happens with Florida State? You heard the crew on ESPN having that debate with their quarterback injured. To your point, Ash, if there is chaos and Oregon wins in a tight game, and we start looking at, okay, Texas losing, okay, Big 12 out. Let's say Florida State loses, ACC out. What happens, right? I even think it's worth a discussion if Alabama wins, right? What happens? Does Georgia just get a pass because they've gone to the playoff every year and won it the last 2? I don't think they should. They've left their home stadium 4 times all year. They're not even going to leave their home state for this championship game. Like I think why we continue to see Oregon sit where they are as the top one-loss team is because they look like the best one-loss team. I would argue they look like the best team, period. And I think it's going to be really unique to see how this thing shakes out when it comes to Oregon, because I'm really not worried about them, Ash. Even if Texas wins and they're a one-loss conference champion, and I guess I get like the win over Alabama, but Alabama now is not Alabama then. The game after Texas, Alabama changed starting quarterbacks. Ty Simpson became the starting quarterback, right? It took a while for Jalen Milroe to become the dude there again. So I just say that context is vitally important. Where this Oregon team, and Reese Davis said it. He goes, hey, when you look at common opponents and what Texas did to Texas Tech and what Oregon did at Texas Tech, I get it. But when you look at who the teams are today, you can't argue what Oregon is. And I get it. Texas is playing at a really high level too, but the Ducks have just throttled everybody. They could beat a top 5 team, a top 3 team in UW. That's much different than who Texas has to play in their championship game. So I think this year, those 13 members are going to have to figure out like best body of work. Is it the 4 best right now? And there's a lot of arguments for everybody that can help make your case. I think for Oregon, though, the one thing we've seen is that if they win, they're in. Because the case has been met every time by the committee saying, yep, they look the part. They look the part. Take the strength of schedule, take Utah ranking, not ranking, take it out. It doesn't matter. Bo Nix and what he's doing, Boo Corrigan just referenced it moments ago. They're balling. And they're favored in this game. We'll see how it shakes out. I think it's going to be a hell of a championship game. But I'm not worried about the winner getting in. And to your point, if there's a little chaos, I'd be really curious to see what the committee does. And if they leave the SEC out, God forbid, the pressure will be immense, but that's why they're tasked to have a backbone and to not cave to fan base, not cave to a slogan, not cave to a region, but do what's best for the sport and what they see. And I just kind of going to sit back on Friday and Saturday and hope it's as challenging of an environment as possible for this committee, because I want to see where they net out in the final year of the 4 years or of the 4 teams.
What's going to be the thing that ultimately decides this game on Friday?
There's a couple sides to this incredible matchup. There's one like, go to what's sexy, go to what gets the headlines, go to the billboard in New York City, go to Bodacious, go to Bo Nix versus Michael Penix Jr. I mean, this is everything you dream of. You got a Heisman candidacy campaign that has begun in the preseason for both of these guys that is going to finish really strong in this game. I'm sure the broadcast crew, Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler and Holly Rowe, will be all over that storyline. We've seen this happen many times late in the season where a Heisman can be won in a championship type of environment. That is this, especially with the command both quarterbacks have. For the Heisman voters out there, please do not listen to our friends in the South. We love Jaden Daniels. I think he's a heck of a player. He's likely going to be on my ballot as well as a Heisman voter, but I won't vote until all the games are done, including those played in other parts of the country. Wait till Saturday night. But you're going to have that at stake in this game. So I go immediately there. And then I go to the intangibles of those players. I'd be watching them. If I was calling this game, I'd say, get a camera on Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. the whole game. What are they like on the sideline? I mean, these guys have been carrying a lot throughout their competitive journey of this entirety of the season. I think, too, I go to their offensive fronts. I mean, these are teams that are built with size and strength. You know, Washington has really talented players up front. They're going to have to run the football a little bit. And you go to the other side of the defensive front of the Oregon Ducks, and it's so veteran-laden. We're talking about a 7th-year player in Popo Amavai, a freshman in Mateo Uyunglele, and Jordan Birch playing as good as he's played his entire collegiate career, as well as numerous other players like Brandon Dorlus and company. I mean, these are guys that played a lot of football. How do they handle the run game? And then on the outside, what are the matchups like? Like, there's a world where you look at Rome Odunze with everything he's done in big moments and say, well, why isn't he a Heisman candidate? I'd be curious if he gets some votes. Does he steal some votes from Michael Penix Jr.? He's played at that high of a level. Today, the Biletnikoff finalist came out. He's on it as a voter. I'm happy to say he was number 1 for me. And I don't think it's much of a question in terms of how he's played in huge games, in big moments, in really every phase. So I would go there. And then can Oregon run the ball, you know, with Bo Nix? And what does the QB run game look like? This is a guy who's thrown 2 picks all season long. His decision-making is impeccable. And it's because they can run the football. It's because of the creativity with Will Stein, one of the top coordinators in the country. So there are storylines for days, Ash. And I think you always net out at like, this is bigger than even the players playing, because it's these brands that are so synonymous with one another. They're absolutely, a fan base hates each other. Let's just be blunt about it. And to have this layout like it is in a year where thankfully divisions have been eliminated because we get this type of matchup. It's a play-in game. It's a potential Heisman winning game. It's a legacy game as the 2 teams finish the Pac-12 and enter into another league. So there is a ton. Do not look away. Like, don't take bathroom breaks. Like, do not leave your television wherever you're watching this one. It should be an absolute blast.
Yeah, well said. And I apologize and thanks for carrying the way, Yogs. I think my internet's going in and out a little bit, so hopefully you can hear me okay. And if not, everyone's here to listen to you anyway. So you
Oh,
just keep rolling. If
yeah,
I
we
go back
got you.
out,
Hey, there's
you
probably
always
a lot
do.
of tweets coming in through your, internet
It
fiber right
is.
now,
It's
seeking
exactly right.
tickets, wanting to go to the pregame show. I mean, there's a lot of you're going to be doing
Yeah,
on Friday
VIP
night.
tailgate, baby. Let's talk about that before I've got a couple more non-FCG things I want to talk to you about to wrap up, but we should mention that we're going to be at the VIP tailgate starting at 1 o'clock.
We will be there. Bottom line, we will be there. I hope all of you are there.
Definitely
It'll be a
this, and then we'll
blast.
also I got to see Arizona ASU in person
Okay.
on Saturday night.
What you got?
And tell me a little bit about this Arizona season as you look back at what Jed Fish did. And we have a
Hey,
visitor.
buddy. We got a great guest. I love tonight. Tonight is perfect. I hope it's like this in the committee room come Saturday and Sunday. Like
We are all about
internet cutting out, surprise visitors. I mean, that's exactly how it should be. Why not? That's college football at its best. Arizona, I'll say this. For the first time in a while, I'm like, who the coaches vote for coach of the year? Is it Jed Fish? Is it Dan Lanning? Is it Kalen DeBoer? Does Kyle Whittingham steal a couple votes? I don't know. I think what Jed Fish has done has been absolutely phenomenal. Just how he's positioned this team, how he took over a team. He didn't have the luxury of changing and flipping the roster. Like he didn't get to bring any luggage. Like he showed up and he had the players that were there and had to coach them and then had to go recruit. And thankfully for him and his program, they went to Orange County and got Noah Fafita and Tetero McMillan and a bunch of other young, talented players who are in their second year that have really taken this thing to a special place. The finish was awesome. I hope they get an epic bowl matchup. Calling the Notre Dame game over the weekend, I was saying, God, it'd be fun to see Notre Dame and Arizona in a big time bowl. I don't know if that is likely. I'd imagine there's a world where they probably go to the Alamo Bowl, but we'll see how things shake out this weekend. To that point, though, this program is positioned to do everything that Jed Fish set out to do when he was hired. And as you recall, not a lot of people were fired up about that hire, but we just said, hey, be patient. He's got a plan, and we've seen that plan continue to get rolled out. I'm excited for that athletic department. I'd imagine they lock him up and his assistants. There's been a ton of play for his assistants around the country, and rightfully so, because it's a really well-coached team. I don't think I look at Arizona and I say, God, they're the most talented team in the league. I think there's a lot of other teams that are really talented, but they didn't compete and perform or strategize or execute the way Arizona did. And I think they're a team for them next year in the expanded playoff. There's a world where we should really talk about them getting a playoff berth. I don't think that's ridiculous. I don't think that is over the top hype. I think that's like grounded. Yeah, if I had to pick a favorite in the Big 12, I'd pick Arizona, and I wouldn't even flinch heading into next season. And all that credit goes back to Jed Fish and how he's built and constructed the roster and the organization.
Well, and you mentioned when you win, and every fan base, it's hard because one of the things that comes with winning is that people are coming after your coaches. And that's part of the deal. And obviously we saw that happen this weekend. My heart's with Oregon State fans because obviously the news that Jonathan Smith's going to take over for Mel Tucker in East Lansing. I know Beavers fans are upset, and I feel bad for them. Like both the Beavs and the Cougs, they don't deserve the hands that they're holding right now. Like, let's just call it what it is. Yeah. But I also think Jonathan Smith did so much for that program. He rebuilt the culture. He had other opportunities to leave and didn't. And given where things are right now and where college football is going, when you think there's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer truly Power 5 or power conference jobs, you hate it, but you also understand it. And personally, I wish Jonathan nothing but the absolute best.
Yeah, he's been great to us. And look, it's a steal for Michigan State. I think if we're in a different time in the Pac-12 conference, was what it was a year ago, I don't think he takes this job because he knows what he's building there. But there's a lot that we all know. We've told this story a million times in terms of what is going on and the unknown of what Oregon State and Washington State are going into. I'll say this, and I've said this to Oregon State fans. I've talked to candidates that have a chance to get this job. I'd imagine the new head coach will be announced relatively soon. You're in a position now in the reconstruction of this league, in all the knowledge that I've learned, Ash, to fund the program in the way that you want over the course of the next couple of years. That's going to allow you to hire the right assistants. It's going to allow you to, through your collective, retain players. We saw Damian Martinez earlier today say he's staying at Oregon State. I think he's the best back in the league. How about that as a statement? I'd imagine that reverberation is loud, swift, and strong within that locker room, saying, hey, we can come back. And I always go back to the simple question of what matters most. And if winning is what matters most in the expanded playoff, there's a world where Oregon State and Washington State, if they can continue to keep these rosters together, which I think they'll keep more people than we think in the era that we're in. They're gonna have a chance to really go win, because I think they're already at a higher level than some of the teams they're gonna be playing. Or it was leaked earlier today what their schedule may be against some Mountain West opponents. They're gonna have a chance to be sitting a year from now in this conversation and say, okay, at 11-1 or 12-0, or in the conversation to get an 11-12 seed and get a shot at this thing. And that's all you really want. And I think that Oregon State and Washington State will have a chance to go compete in a playoff, probably faster than Michigan State, to be blunt. So that, I think, is something that I think the fans should hang on to. I know it's hard, and the time in this sport right now is hard. It's brutal. It's lunacy. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's reality. And what Scott Barnes and Pat Chun have done, as you know, is they've rolled up their sleeve and they've competed to find a way through it. Oregon State will do that. Jake Dickert and his staff will do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this team competes, because you can't watch the Apple Cup and tell me that Washington State can't play at this level. You can't watch Oregon State over the last couple of seasons under Jonathan Smith say they can't compete at a Power 5 level. I mean, they can. I looked at a lot of teams around the country in the bottom half of their respective Power 5 divisions, and they couldn't hold a candle to what those two teams had built. And they've beaten some of those teams in non-conference play, a la the Wisconsin game for Washington State. So I wouldn't feel as though your program is crumbling. And I think that's an easy narrative to pull on. I think the storylines aren't great, and we know the reality of not having a league or not being in the Power 5 league and rebuilding the Pac-12 league is not what anyone idealized, but it's reality. And I actually kind of believe, and I'm bullish on these two programs, and I'm looking forward to watching them and staying closely connected to them as they do that.
Beautifully said, Yogs. Can I do one final shout out to Josh Issue's Cal Bears, who are bowl eligible after winning their final 3 games of the regular season? And maybe, I don't know, maybe at Stanford that game was sweeter, but I don't know that there was anyone sweeter than beating the Bruins in the Rose Bowl on Saturday night, at least for that group and that fan base, and all the storylines behind the scenes. In the final Pac-12 regular season game, it was cool to see Justin Wilcox and his staff celebrate that one. And Fernando Mendoza, hats off to you, buddy. Big fan. And it's cool. So there's a ton of great storylines, and we could go into a lot more here, as I know we're already going deep into the night on Tuesday, as evidenced by my children that keep popping up and telling me that.
Well, let me just say this on the Cal thing, because it's fair, because I want all of our friends in the SEC to hear this. Like, when we start comping, and this is going to happen if Alabama beats Georgia, well, Alabama, what a win against Auburn. Cal's a made field goal away from beating Auburn too. And Cal's a 2-point conversion away from beating USC. Cal's a few snaps away from beating pretty much everybody on their schedule other than Washington and Oregon. And I just say that for context. Like, if we want to play the Oregon-Texas Tech game in week 2 game, cool. Then let's play the Cal-Auburn game. Let's play that game too. Like, let's play Ohio U and Iowa State. Like, let's play the game. Down to play it. And I'm with you. They do deserve the credit, because it would have been easy for Cal to fold. They went through a change in leagues midseason. You look at all the things that happened within the California system and UCLA and Cal, but they dominated every phase of that game. And I think Justin Wilcox probably told you the same thing he told me, of like, it was one of the proudest years he's had with how this team has competed through so much adversity, 3 starting quarterbacks to do what they've done, which is get to a bowl. And I'm hoping it's right here. It might be in the backyard here, the Gronk Bowl. See what happens.
Would love that. All right. Well, we did say back in October, the only CFP ranking that truly really matters is the one on December 3rd. And we will be with you this Sunday after the CFP rankings are announced, about 9:45 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after 48 hours in Las Vegas. I'm excited. Keep an eye on our social channels, everybody, for the next few days. We'll have a ton of great content coming your way. And if you are in Vegas, come say hello. We'll be at the VIP tailgate, Lot N, starting around 1 o'clock. And then Yogi and I will be down on the field getting everybody set for the championship game kickoff, 5 o'clock in Allegiant Stadium, which, by the way, if you haven't been, just go. There's still flights available. I've got maybe a couple extra tickets, so hit me up.
Hey, where's the post-game party at? Have you decided that? Have you
that was on you. That was,
okay.
There was one thing that I asked of you.
That is true. I got to get on that. I'm surprised. We're going to do the show, the Sunday reaction show from our home studios. We're not staying. We're not staying in Vegas.
We're not.
Maybe we will. Anyway, the great connection.
All right. Shout out to everybody behind the scenes who does so much. We love you guys. And I hope to see all of you in Las Vegas and get back to packing, Yogs.
I'll guarantee I'm bringing this hoodie. Go Musketeers.